What is up, my Shadowverse soldiers, and welcome back to another Shadowverse Evolved video. Happy Friday, everybody. We made it to the end of the week. Thank you for being here. So let's go ahead and figure out what decks topped in Houston, Texas for this Bushi Road Springfest regional that just happened this past weekend. So we have our first team, Forte, Step on Me. So we have Dan Ranch's Seed A Dragoncraft deck. And looking at it already, Dragoncraft has many things that we can work with. Alright, so the major key differences that I'm seeing in this deck list is the 2 of Execution. Nobody really runs this card anymore, but I still think it's a very amazing card. Just some hard removal to go ahead and get rid of something just in case you're scared. And the fact that it's a quick is just also nice. And then the other thing that we're seeing is the 2 of Olivia. Pretty good clutch card just for that multitude of abilities that you can do. And then we have the 2 of Riko Kashimoto. So people usually only use this card as a 1 of, or even a 2 of, but having a 2 of just for that on hit, hard removal, on strike is just very nice. Go ahead and swing into something that doesn't really matter, or you can already, she's very big, she's a 6/6, so she's definitely going to get rid of something, and then dealing that damage afterwards is just so good. So yeah, shout out to Dan Ranch for first place in Seat A. Looking at the Evo deck, we're rocking Shapeshifter Mage, which I did not go over, I'm so sorry. So Shapeshifter Mage is still a very good card too. So there's lots of hard removal in this deck. We have the Execution, we have the Riko, and then we have Shapeshifter Mage. So like, this is a card that should not be slept on going into forward sets, because the fact that it just has a Sail and then Bane, no matter what his stats are, whenever it swings into something, it's just going to perish. So that's what's really good about this card. Don't forget about it. I see that this deck's not running any of the Draknir or whatever his name is, the guy that summons the Dragonic Weapon, which people are starting to run, but I feel like he's not as good as Shapeshifter Mage, because Shapeshifter Mage just go ahead and gets rid of something instead of dealing like X amount of damage to it. So that's what it is. But congratulations, Dan Ranch, for getting first place with your team and in Seat A. And I think you just get rewards. I'm sorry, I didn't look at the prize list. I think you get, I hope your promo packs were nice. So let's figure out what was in Seat B. All right, every time I see this deck, it feels like a looming ghost, because I have this deck and I feel like I have no success with it. But that might be my ratios, or that just might be my thought process on playing the deck. But Uma is just very strong. I feel like going to set 4, it'll still be a solid deck. Will it go down in tiers? I'm not sure, but we're in a very different meta in comparison to what it was in JP, because in JP, they didn't have the limitations on Uma, and we have the limitations, and Uma is still performing well. It's still getting into every list, every top 8, top 4, whatever lists we want to do, and Uma's just going to be there, and I feel like it's a solid deck. It's not really going to change, it's not getting any support, but it's still very strong. Alright, and sorry for yapping so much, but we're looking at Hikago's B-Seat Uma deck. So this deck is pretty interesting. It has a lot of parts in it. So we have the Eat Fast, Yum Fast, and then we have the Swing Skyline, which is very rare to see in the Uma decks that we're seeing as of late. And then we have Utidy Numechi. So let's figure out what this card does. Look at that, and I butchered the name. It's Yaino Muteki. So on race, you give this follower +1/+1, and then you select the one other follower on your field and give it +1/+1 as well. So I can see how this card pairs up nicely with Swing Sky, because you play Swing Sky. Swing Sky has Storm, and then you could probably potentially race Yaino, and then already have Swing Sky on the field, or play Swing Sky and then race Yaino. She's a 4/4. Swing Sky is gonna swing for 3. That's 7 damage already. So Uma's gonna be swinging those big numbers, and I like that for Uma. But getting back to the deck, I can already see that Mayano Top Gun's in the deck. This is a pretty solid card, just to the fact that it can definitely deal with wards, and it can potentially swing for even more if you have Flowers for You attached for it. I feel like Flowers for You is just a really goated card, especially when you're going in for some damage. Special Week Evo, Flowers for You, Mayano Top Gun, if there's 4 other Uma followers or cards on the field, and then it has that Storm, you're going to be swinging for a lot of damage in one turn, and that's what I really like about Umacraft. Alright, so let's go ahead and peek at this Evolved deck. So we have the 2 of Agnes with the 2 of Special Week with the 2 of Silence Suzuka. Also, I wanted to note that all these cards have like high rarity, so I want to give a shout out to that, because these cards are some money. So shout out for having that. And then we have the 4 of Carrots, if I didn't already say that, paired up with the Rune Leader. So this is a pretty nice Uma deck. I like it. Shout out to Hikago for being in Seat B and getting first place. And I hope you enjoy your prizes. All right, and we're moving on into Seat C. So we have Killua's Kevin NG Swordcraft deck, the Hero Sword. So one thing I can always say about Hero Sword, it is a very aggressive deck. Going into set 4, I don't know how practical this deck is going to be. I still feel like it's going to be very good because it's aggro. Aggro is just going to do its thing. It's going to get under you. But I feel like this deck is really going to perform in Seat C going into Springfest, because the one deck that really deals with this the best is Dragoncraft, is because they have that conflagration and they can constantly deal with your board, and then they can heal very nicely with Olivia after, you know, you've stalled for a turn. And then they can just swing with Olivia and then conflag and then potentially do Shenlong afterwards. So it's a lot of healing and a lot of, you know, back and forth with that deck. But on the bright side, being in CC, that means that you have less likely of a chance to go up against Dragoncraft, because Dragoncraft is probably the better deck, if not the best deck, because that's why it's in Seat A. But less about the meta talk. Let's figure out what's in this deck. So we have the 3 of Unbridled Fury. That's not in my build because I just didn't have access to it, but this is still a good card because you spam out cards so fast. But one thing I would say is if I'm running Unbridled Fury, then I probably wouldn't run Alexander. But Alexander is still a very good card for removal and everything, because you play him out and then he just clears the board. And that's one thing that this deck really lacks in, is board clear, because all you have is the Unbridled Fury. There's no Takayoteo, so it doesn't really matter for that. And then we have Amelia. That's like really all that comes to it. And then, oh, excuse me. And then we have the Mock Knight Evo. So the Mock Knight Evo also helps with the removal too. And then Old Man, Old Woman. But, you know, Old Man, Old Woman has to be stale and, you know, get rid of that summoning sickness to be able to swing and potentially get rid of something. So there's that danger there. And then they have a nice, pretty end game here with the Leonidas and the Narita Bryan. There's pretty good cards to end the game off with. So let's go ahead and peek at that Evo deck. So looking at the Evo deck here, we can see that we have 2 of Mock Knight, the 2 of Floral Fencers, of course, and then the 2 of Amira Spear Knight, with the 2 of Valiant Fencer. So these really occupy most of the Evo space because it's just so tight. You need these cards in here. And then the real flex spots that we have, minus the 1 of Leonidas, is the Albert Levin Saber. So people have to decide between either having Takayoteo or Albert. You can't have both. I feel like you can't have both. If you do have both, you feel like you have a consistency issue with heroic entry, which, you know, even though they are probably sitting at 1-1-1, but, you know, hitting these big cards when you're doing heroic entry really does hurt. Because it's like, all right, well, you know, I'm hitting these big cards after I just paid 3 to do this or did this for free, and I'm getting nothing. Like, there's a slim chance that, you know, 3 out of your 4 cards might be these high drops, which is very scary. So yeah, congratulations, Killua, for getting in first place with CC Hero Sword, showing up with aggro and doing the damn thing. All right, let's see what decks got in second place. All right, and we have the second place team Bolt on 7. So we have Tuon's Uma deck sitting in Seat A. Oh my gosh. I would have never thought I would see the light of day of Uma being in Seat A, because usually Seat A is where the most powerful decks are. And I'm not saying Uma isn't very powerful, it's just very linear. But I'm glad 2-1 was able to craft some sort of Uma graph to really shake things up. I can see a lot of differences here, so let's go ahead and dig into this deck. Alright, so there's a lot of differences from this first team Seat B Uma list. We can see that they're rocking Muraszynski for some removal. They're rocking Gold City for that recursion of, you know, play points, which would be probably good in the late game. But we do see Ogre Cap, which they did not have in their last list. They probably didn't have like really solid end game for Ogre, but since they only ran like 4 carrots. But they do have Smart Falcon, which is an interesting card. So for those of you who don't know what Smart Falcon does, when she comes into play, you return any number of other Uma cards on your field to their owner's hands. And then you deal X damage to each enemy following the field, and X equals 2 times the number of cards returned. So I would like to know, how practical was this card? Was there any situations where this came up? I'm pretty sure if you went up against like Hero Sword, this would probably be pretty well, because, you know, they don't have very big numbers in the terms of defense. And the fact that you can race this follower and then swing into whatever's left in case, you know, anyone survived is pretty nice. So yeah, shout out to Tuon for getting second place in Seat A with Uma. That's very interesting. So let's go ahead and take a peek at this Evo deck. All right, so looking at the Evo deck here, let's find out what we have. So we have the 3 of Agnes, the 2 of Special Week, and the 1 Muraszynski, and then the 4 carrots. Well, I guess that's probably just a staple. I'm not a huge Uma player, I'm so sorry. So it looks like 4 carrots is the way to go with the Havencraft leader. Thank you for the diversity. guys and running the Uma instead of just running the regular Uma leader. Not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I do like the diversity in the leaders. All right, moving on into seat B for second place team. I'm seeing some hero sword here with willed swordcraft deck. So what I'm already seeing is the Luminous Knight, the 3 of Luminous Knight. This is not a bad card, especially if you're going to be swinging. So let's say I drop Ninja Trainee on turn 1, and then I drop Luminous Knight to make Ninja Trainee a 3/2, so that's 3 damage, and then they're going to have to take care of Luminous Knight eventually. So if there's something else on the board while they take care of Luminous Knight, or, you know, potentially swing into something with Luminous Knight to give something an extra buff, is also nice. And I think the other card that was a very key difference with the Novice Trooper, I feel like this card is very good, especially after the Leonidas Resolve comes out. You know, you have a 6/6 storm to just come out and swing face. So if you're really struggling with your opponent being at 5 or, like, you know, 6, anything below 6, and then you've gone and used all your resources, you have Leonidas, you have like 2 cards in your hand. Well, I have Novice Trooper to potentially end the game if they don't have the response, which is pretty nice. But other than that, this looks like a staple hero sword list. So let's figure out what is in the Evo deck. All right, so taking a peek at this Evo deck. So we have the 2 of Amiro, the 2 of Floor Fencer, the 2 of Mach Knight, Valiant Fencer. It looks exactly the same. It looks exactly the same as the first one. So this is basically the staple, what you need, especially, it's like going to be different if you're running either the Albert or the Tokayoteo. That's really the only other option you have. Some people actually run Tsubaki, which isn't bad because, you know, she has that potential for Storm or either removal, which is not bad. All right, next up we have Karate Kid's Abysscraft Control Seat C list, and this looks very interesting to get into. I'm honestly not sure if in Ontario anybody topped with Abysscraft. I can't think off the top of my head, I can't even remember. But this list looks very interesting, so I'd like to pick apart this list and see what was going on here. Alright, so the thing about Abyss Control is there are a lot of moving parts, so you have to make sure you survive and you have some sort of early game, so that's why we run the Bellringer and Angelic Snipe, so you just don't get aggroed down and just killed too quickly. There are a lot of spells just to keep you alive. You have the Bellringer Evo potentially that we're probably going to see, Angelic Snipe, Surefire Bullets with Undying Resentment, and then we have Bone Chimera with, you know, just some hard removal, and then even more hard removal after that, we have Merzinski. And then even harder removal, we have Riko Kashimoto. So there's lots of ways to get things off the field. Oh, and even softer removal with the Demon Punk, you know, Devil, which has that Bane if you subtract 2 from your leader's defense, which is also good. So it's definitely going to survive. It's definitely every hand that you're going to have, those 4 cards, there's going to be some sort of removal in it. See, and that's what I really love about Abyss Control, because you can really cater to how you want to play. How it looks like they're rocking more of like a vampire line with, you know, some extra things in it. You know, you're playing some way to be proactive, because all these cards are just reactive cards in some sort of way. The only really proactive cards I see is the Queen Vampire with the Crazed Executioner and then the Vaint. Those are the only proactive cards I can see. All of these are just reactive. Like, hey, is there a card here that I want to get rid of? Well, I'm going to use Bone Chimera to rush into it. Or, you know, Demon Punk, Demonium, they're not haven't played anything, so let me set up a ward. Any Sanguine I want to do at any point in time, I'll give him Bane, and then have that Sanguine active. And it's absolutely amazing. I like how this deck came together. But one card that I do want to point out that I've been having trouble putting into my deck is the Odell, and let's talk about it. Alright, so for those of you who don't know what Odell Black Swan does, she is a 5 cost. When she comes into play, you deal 2 damage to each enemy leader and enemy follower on the field, which is a pretty good board wipe. And then we have the Necrocharge 20 to where she has Storm if you have 20 cards in your cemetery. And then she has a strike ability when she swings. In general, she deals 2 damage to each enemy leader and each enemy follower on the field. I feel like as a 2-of, this card isn't that bad because it just, in C-Seat, it's pretty good against Hero Sword. So, you know, their costs aren't that high, and then when she's finally able to swing, she can swing for a potential 8, just for the fact that she deals 2 damage to the leader, and then she's going to be dealing 2 again when she swings, so she's kind of like a little John d'Arc, but in a weird kind of way, because, you know, you have, most people usually John d'Arc in the same turn, but Odell, you know, if she stays, which people are going to try their best to remove her so she's not stuck on the field to not take 8, then she's pretty good. So one card that really stuck out to me, which has amazing art, was the Queen Vampire. So one thing about Vampire Bats right now is that they're not very good. It's all over the place. They do have a lot of support and you can make a deck out of it, but it's just not very strong. I know in the future, Vampire Bats is probably going to be meta. I think it's meta currently in JP. I'm not sure. I am thinking off the top of my head. I do scroll through social media of Shadowverse and see what's going on over there. But I think Queen Vampire was definitely pretty good endgame because what Abyss Control wants to do is really try their best to gas you out. And this is an interesting take with Queen Vampire by spawning a whole bunch of force bats that ward, and you have like 2 to 3 cards in your hand. I highly doubt they're board wipes, so imagine getting through this wall of bats that keep coming in and having the +2 attack with ward that you have to deal with first before you can even deal with the player themselves. So yeah, along with the Queen Vampire, I'm pretty sure the Vampire Noble was what helped. So let's go ahead and peek at this Evo deck. All right, so let's go ahead and look at this Evo deck. So we do indeed have the one of Bellringer that I was talking about earlier, the 2 of Vampire Noble, and then we have 2 of Crazed Executioner along with the 2 of Merzinski, and then of course the 1 of Azazel, because we really don't need Azazel all that much, or the Evil at least. We only need to do him once. And then we have the 2 of Carrots for a potential nice nature to just swing into something, which is probably nice. So shout out for the Seat C for playing Abyss Control and having a pretty spicy deck. Alright, so we have our 3rd place team, and we're looking at birds, eggs, and grass, whatever the hell that means. So we have Lon Montez's Havencraft deck. So sitting in seat A, and it is Egg Haven. So the thing about Egg Haven is that it's a very intricate deck, because as soon as you go for the Humpty Dumpty play, you gotta realize your hand size is 0. And unless you have Bellringer on the field after you do Humpty Dumpty, you might be sitting at a potential 1 or 2 cards, which is nice. But you have to make sure you have at least cards in your EX area so you can recur and have some sort of value going on into the turns in the future. Not going to really talk too much about Egg Haven because everybody knows what this deck does. We go for the Humpty Dumpty burn, we go for the Tin Soldier burn, then we have the Pinion Prince to go ahead and recur anything that's out of our cemetery, and we're using Alice's effects to go ahead and get things into our EX area so we don't have to worry about our hand size too much after we Humpty Dumpty. So everything's set up pretty nicely. Alright, so let's go ahead and peek at this Evo deck. So we have the 2 of Bellringers. Of course, usually people only run 1 of it because they want to stop the aggro, but I can understand why you would rock 2 of, because you don't have a hand size, so you don't really have the options to really choose. Like, hey, I can do this to this guy. Well, no, I'm really depending on my Evo deck and what I see off the top of my deck and in my EX area, which are all, well, 2 of them are secret places, but one of them, the main one, is definitely not secret, sitting in your EX area, cards like that. But then we do have Alice sitting at 3 because she's just a staple, and then we have 3 of Humpty Dumpty because he's just a staple too, and then we have 2 of Pinion Prince just to have the assail and big numbers to swing into something that's not engaged, which is pretty nice. So shout out to Alon for his 3rd place Seat A Havencraft Egg list. Alright, and we have God's B-Seat Swordcraft Hero Sword list. So a major difference that I'm seeing, what I talked about earlier, is if you're either running the Albert Levin Saber or the Takao Teo, looks like they were going for this version. And, both of them are still equally good cards. They both have their merits and what they're good at. Now, it's just practically which one's going to happen more. I think the Albert Levin Saber is probably more often going to happen because you get that double damage in 1 turn, especially after Leonidas play. That's absolutely nasty. But an 8/8 Takao Teo is not bad for Storm if you're going for that play too. And the other thing that I'm seeing is the Latham. So this is a card that's really slept on. I wouldn't say no one liked this card, but everyone does not like using this card because he's just a 2-cost 3/3. I know it really does seem pretty tempo when you're playing it in Hero Sword. I mean, he's a 2-cost and he has 3/3 stats. Well, Amiro does that when he swings with another hero follower, so really, what do you want? You could really replace this card for something else that does a little bit more. But don't think that I'm ridiculing Latham, because he's still a good card. If you pair this up with Luminous Knight, he's going to be swinging for 4, and that's still a problem in itself because, him turning into a 2-cost 4/3 is just some big damage. I mean, it feels like it's Mock Knight numbers when he comes out off of Heroic Entry. But the sad part is he doesn't have Storm. He is just a vanilla. And if you don't have Luminous Knight in your hand, or you're hitting Heroic Entry and you don't give him that big buff, or you just play him off of Heroic Entry, it does feel a little lackluster. But shout out to God for getting 3rd place with your Seat B Hero Sword deck, and let's go ahead and peek at this Evo deck. Well, I know you can see the Evo deck before, but let's go ahead and take a gander at it. So we have the 3 of Amiro Spear Knight, which I believe that's probably what they were focusing on. We have the 2 of Flow Fencer, of course, the 3 of Mock Knight, and then the 1 of Valiant Fencer, and the 1 Takayo Teo, which is very interesting. Of course, we need the 1 Takayo Teo, but the 1 of Valiant Fencer is very interesting because I usually see people rocking this as a 2 of, because just in case, you know, the first one doesn't go off like you want it to, then you have that second one just for a backup, just in case, you know, you drop another Valiant Fencer, go into an Amiro Spear Knight, and then go ahead and evolve them, evolve the Amiro, and then go from there. Alright, last but finally not least, we have Dom's Forest Craft deck, and it is in the form of Silver Bolt. So the main thing about Silver Bolt is you need as many cards in your hand as you need to get as much damage as you can from Silver Bolt, and the fact that it's a quick spell so you can do it on your opponent's turn is even better. So let's go ahead and look at this deck. And just by looking at it, I can see that it's a basic, really, Forest Craft list. It starts with the Bell Ringers, with the Elfchild Mage, just so you know that bounce mechanic. So you're using that in Marvelous Sunday to go ahead and accumulate some damage in that early game. And then you have the Shinko Windy to go ahead and look at the top deck to see what you might potentially get when you do either Harvest Festival or Nature's Guidance, or whatever you want to do. And then, you know, we have the Harvest Festival, Nature's Guidance, just for the bounce mechanic. We do have the bounce mechanic, and then we have the Crystalia Tia. And the one thing I want to say about Crystalia Tia is that when you go for that combo 3 turn, you just could accumulate so much value. So like, let's say I do Sheikah Windy, I go into Ancient Elf, and then I go into Crystalia Tia. Like, I have a 3/3 ward, I have a 1/1 Crystalia Tia, and then they have a 4/4 Crystalia Eve token that's sitting on the field, which is like, alright, well, this is all gonna stay unengaged. So if they don't have like some sort of conflagration, I'm looking at you, Dragoncraft, or any sort of board wipe, then they've accumulated some board in a crazy state that you need to deal with fast. But I see the only real card that's new is rocking the Tweedledee and Tweedledum to when you evo, you can look at the top for a 1-cost card, which is not that bad. So moving on, they had some removal and some endgame things. They had Ishin Flash to go ahead and put things back into your opponent's hand. They had Rose Deer to go ahead and help with the Thorn Burst and set up for a combo for a potential play later on. And then we have Silent Suzuka to go ahead and evolve her and then put things to the top of the deck so you can go ahead and remove a ward or something like that so they don't depend on that. And then we have Riko Kashimoto just so you can have the 2-for-1 special on removal. And then we have the bones the bones of the deck, and that being Silver Bolt to go ahead and finish your opponent off, because you know throughout the middle of the game you're definitely going to be swinging for a potential 5 with the Ancient Elf Evo, or 5 with Silent Suzuka, or you know, dealing 3 damage to them through the Rose Deer Thorn Burst combo. So let's go ahead and peek at this Evo deck. I know you can see half of it right now, but we're rocking the 1 of Bellringer with the 2 of Ancient Elf, the 1 of Crystalia Tia, the 2 of Tweedledee and Tweedledum, 2 Silent Suzuka, and then 2 Carrots, which is not bad. Pretty solid decks all around. I hope everyone had a good time being at the event, because I know it's a great atmosphere being at a regional. I've done lots of it for Dragon Ball, and I just loved seeing everybody, opponents, having a good time, playing our favorite game, being very competitive, you know, high stakes, and especially, you know, getting the top 4 and getting those extra prizes makes it even better. Well, alright guys, that is the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. You don't know how much it means to me that you're still watching and still being here with me. Make sure you're safe in whatever you do tonight and safe whatever you do for the rest of the year. I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.
I gave you all my love, baby, my heart is cold when you're around. You warm it up, liquid gold, baby, yeah, you warm it up, liquid gold, baby, and my affection, all that paper you wasted. Take my love.